This is truly what can send XRP to all-time highs and even further. The XRP flywheel effect. It is already in motion. Today I want to highlight some key things said in a recent interview as well as give you some additional information that you absolutely must know about XRP. We are running out of time to build up our positions before we get into 2026. Let me give you everything you need to know to catch you up on this very important topic. I want to quickly touch on the ETFs first. There are 7 trading days left in 2025. If you take an average of 12 million XRP being absorbed per day, we end the year with another 84 million XRP gone into these funds. That puts us at nearly 800 million XRP accumulated since the ETFs launched in just 6 weeks. And we are starting 2026 with all of these funds already running and more ETFs set to launch on top of that. As more ETFs come onto the market, this number should accelerate significantly. We could start seeing hundreds of millions of dollars flowing into XRP ETFs every single day. Bitcoin some days sees billions of dollars in ETF flows. Imagine when XRP gets to that same level given its real-world utility. I am genuinely looking forward to that day. Just to give you a sense of where we could be just a few months from now, if ETF demand holds at roughly 12 million XRP per day, that works out to about 720 million XRP absorbed in just 3 months, and about 1.44 billion XRP over the next 6 months. And if more products come online, requiring even more XRP, this number could end up being dramatically higher than that. We know that there is roughly 1 to 2 billion XRP currently sitting on over-the-counter desks available for large institutional buyers. And it looks like we are getting closer and closer to 700 to 800 million of that already being absorbed and taken off the market. Over the next 3 months, we should be able to top out what is available on OTC desks. The only place institutions are going to be able to go after that is directly to Ripple and the open public exchanges. And that is exactly what we want to see happen because it will create massive upward price pressure. Now, fast forward to 2026. Do you see XRP breaking away from the rest of the crypto market and reaching some type of much higher utility-driven value while other things like Bitcoin and other assets potentially continue to go down? That is what this thesis is basically describing. It is going to be very interesting to see how this all plays out, and I would love to hear your thoughts on it. So let me explain the flywheel effect for XRP because this is the core idea that everything is built around. The flywheel effect for XRP is essentially a feedback loop. As more regulated institutional capital and real-world utility flow into the XRP ledger, the circulating liquid supply available on exchanges shrinks. That shrinking supply means each new dollar of demand moves the price even further and higher than it would have before. That higher price and improved infrastructure then attracts even more capital and more utility, which further compresses the available supply and reinforces the whole cycle. It keeps feeding itself and getting stronger. At a high level, this flywheel, which is often called the liquidity compression flywheel, is built on 4 connected ideas working together. First, regulated products like spot ETFs, trusts, and structured notes accumulate XRP and put it into long-term custody rather than leaving it on exchanges. This steadily reduces the liquid float that is available for trading. Second, utility rails, meaning Ripple's on-demand liquidity flows, RLUSD payment corridors, tokenization projects, and identity infrastructure create recurring on-chain settlement demand that is not purely speculative but tied to real-world activity happening every single day. Third, as the float on exchanges shrinks and order books get thinner, even modest new demand causes larger price moves and more price sensitivity. Fourth, the rising price combined with deeper regulated infrastructure attracts more institutions, more custody arrangements, and more utility, which further compresses the float and reinforces the entire cycle from the beginning. The thesis argues that once this loop passes a certain tipping point, XRP does not grind upwards slowly in a gradual way. Instead, it reprices in sharp nonlinear jumps as demand collides with a structurally thin available supply. Now, here is a great breakdown of the specific stages of this flywheel. Stage 1 is ETF flows. Regulated ETFs are steadily absorbing XRP and removing it from the liquid trading float. Units held inside ETF structures tend to be held long-term and are rarely sold back into the market. We are already starting to see this happening in real time. Nearly 800 million XRP has been taken out in just the last 6 weeks. What does the next 6 weeks look like? What about the next 18 weeks or 24 weeks? As more XRP gets taken out, there is less available liquid supply, and of course, the price eventually has to start reflecting that reality. Stage 2 is exchange reserves shrinking. We are already watching this happen at Binance and Coinbase and all the other major exchanges which are holding XRP at multi-year lows. Market makers and exchanges are adapting to the lower inventory available to them. The sell walls on the order books are getting thinner, and the price is becoming more sensitive to any new buying pressure coming in. Stage 3 is RLUSD payment corridors. Ripple's regulated RLUSD stablecoin is being used in predictable settlement cycles. The RLUSD to XRP to fiat flows are generating continuous and recurring transactional demand that is tied directly to real-time payments happening in the real world every day. Stage 4 is ZK Identity Rails. Zero knowledge-based identity and compliance layers, along with enterprise KYC and AML rails on the XRP ledger, are opening the door for much larger institutional money flows that require stronger compliance guarantees before they will move. Regulation is also playing a key role here. The Genius Act is moving forward with all the rulemaking being completed. You are going to start seeing other versions of RL stablecoins launching around the world. You have RLUSD here in the United States, which is already being adopted in places like Japan, Africa, and the EU. But you are also going to have RL Euro and RL Yen and RL Real in Brazil and RL Peso and so on. Eventually, all of the major world currencies are going to have their own stablecoin version living on the XRP ledger, and that is what will allow XRP to serve as the massive bridge asset moving value between all of these different stablecoins. That is stage 3 of the flywheel in action. Stage 4 with the identity rails is going to be critical going forward. The ability to prove you are who you say you are without actually giving up your personal information to multiple parties is a vital piece of the future financial system. Right now, when you send a payment across the globe, it passes through multiple correspondent banks, and every single one of those banks gets access to your personal information. What if you did not have to share any of that? What if you could just verify your identity through zero-knowledge proofs without revealing any underlying personal data? That is going to allow far less fraud and manipulation in financial markets going forward. Stage 5 is institutional custody. Banks, corporate treasuries, and asset managers are holding XRP in regulated custody arrangements. The available float becomes fragmented and locked away, forcing any marginal buyer who needs XRP to compete over razor-thin exchange supply. We are already starting to see this with digital asset treasury companies like Evernorth. There is also approximately $2.1 billion worth of other companies setting up XRP-related treasuries right now. When actual regulation gets passed in the United States, which sounds like it could happen as early as January, many more institutions and companies are going to want to set up their own crypto-related treasuries. That is going to remove even more XRP and Ethereum and other assets from the available supply, and that is going to translate to a lot of upward price pressure. Now, how do you understand this intuitively? There is a very simple mental model that makes the flywheel easy to explain. Think about flow versus float rather than just market cap. Flow equals how much value needs to settle through XRP each day through on-demand liquidity, RLUSD, tokenization, and ETFs. Float equals how many XRP are actually available for sale on exchanges at any given moment. The flywheel starts spinning when flow grows faster than float. If daily settlement demand and long-term custody grow while exchange balances shrink, then each individual XRP has to carry even more economic activity because there is less of it available. That mismatch between supply and demand forces the price and available liquidity to adjust upward until the system finds a new equilibrium at a much higher level. And this is where people start talking about XRP going from $2 to $3 to $50 to $100 very quickly, because all of these things start compounding on each other simultaneously. This is what analysts like Jake Claver are talking about when they mention $750 or $100 XRP. They are describing all of these forces compounding at the same time and pushing the price to extreme levels. I think those numbers are absolutely possible. I just do not necessarily agree with the specific timelines they put out. There are some classic parallels from traditional finance that help explain this dynamic. Corporate stock buybacks combined with index fund accumulation can make stocks hypersensitive to new demand because the available float gets so thin. Stocks with thin floats and strong structural buyers often see very sharp price repricings. The XRP thesis is essentially applying that same logic to a settlement token that has global payment and tokenization infrastructure behind it. Has the flywheel already started spinning? Multiple pieces of this thesis are now visible, and the evidence suggests we are in the early phase of a potential spin-up. Float reduction trends are showing up clearly in on-chain and exchange analytics. XRP is leaving exchanges for long-term custody, over-the-counter arrangements, and institutional wallets, which is visibly shrinking the available trading inventory. ETF and structured product flows into XRP, while still small compared to Bitcoin, are already measured in the high hundreds of millions to over $1 billion. In just the last 3 days, we saw $54 million, then $64 million, then $60 million flowing in back-to-back on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Almost $170 million in just 3 days. That is remarkable. Utility rails are also turning on. RLUSD has grown into one of the larger U.S.-regulated stablecoins with over $1.2 billion outstanding and expanding corridors and DeFi integrations. This gives XRP a consistent and recurring settlement context that is not purely speculative. Ripple's tokenization and custody partners such as ARX and various XRPL-based token assets are explicitly framed as part of a deflationary scarcity flywheel, where more real-world assets and flows being added to the XRP ledger only increase its value and scarcity over time. Multiple institutional and research pieces are now describing the XRP setup as a liquidity flywheel, or self-reinforcing liquidity feedback loop that ties regulatory clarity, custody migration, and infrastructure development together into one coherent structural story. Now, Paul Barron reinforces what we are seeing with RLUSD through this conversation with a fund manager. The fund manager said he thinks XRP is going to be a divergent asset. There has been a lot of talk about the 4-year Bitcoin cycle, and while he believes that cycle is still in effect, with Bitcoin having peaked and now going into its bear cycle, he believes a handful of assets will diverge from that pattern and go their own way. XRP is one of those assets. Just watching XRP hold up and continue to receive daily inflows while everything else is going down is compelling evidence of this divergence. He believes there could be another peak in XRP in 2026 when most other crypto assets are going down. And the reason is the adoption curve. There are so many advancements being made on the XRP ledger, including RLUSD, that global capital markets are starting to truly understand what is being built there, which is driving demand into the ETFs. He said he has never seen anything like the XRP ETF launch. Most ETFs would be thrilled to hit $5 million in assets under management in their entire first year. His fund crossed $300 million in the very first week. People genuinely understand what XRP represents, and they are putting real money behind it. Franklin Templeton, which manages $1.7 trillion in assets, has been working with Ripple for years, especially in Asian markets outside the US, where they were not affected by the lawsuit. Now they are seeing that engagement spread out to more regions of the world, and growing ETF activity is going to enhance liquidity in the underlying XRP market as well. More liquidity begets more liquidity, and a lot of people coming into XRP through ETFs will also end up owning XRP directly in their own wallets and participating in the broader ecosystem. David Schwartz from Ripple wrapped up by saying that institutional adoption on the XRP ledger is going to enable tools and infrastructure that then provide the foundation for mass retail adoption later. Right now, the enterprise adoption is massively accelerating. On-chain flows, on-chain liquidity, and tokenized real-world assets are where the action is happening today. But very soon, that enterprise foundation is going to enable the massive wave of retail adoption that follows. Guys, if you are excited about all of this, please make sure you like and leave a comment below. I want to hear what you think. I feel like we have been on this journey together for so long, and we are finally at a place where things are really genuinely starting to happen. I know you cannot fully see it in the price just yet, but I believe 2026 is going to be an incredible and history-making year for all of us. It is truly an honor to be on this journey with you. Happy holidays. I hope you have a wonderful Christmas, or whatever you celebrate in your personal lives. Happy New Year, and thank you for making this one of the most watched XRP channels on the entire planet. I consider that an absolute honor, and I just want to say thank you. Thank you. Happy holidays. Sonnet 4.6.